In this video, we're going to show you how to install a valve cover on your Toyota Tundra located on both sides of the engine. And with your hood open, you're going to go ahead and locate the battery on the driver's side front portion of the vehicle. We're going to use our 10mm socket on a 1/4" ratchet. We're going to go ahead and loosen and remove the clamping nut here. Now we did spray this down with some rust penetrant. Now loosen that. Get to remove your tool, remove that ground terminal, and set it aside. So remove this cover right here using a 10mm socket. Set that aside. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to loosen the clamp here, the hose clamp on the throttle body. Locate this connector right here. I'm going to use the pinch tab on the top side right here, pinch it and pull that off. Now I want to remove this harness from the air filter lid. So I'm going to use some small needle-nose pliers. Push in those little retainer tabs and just tuck that off to the side. On the airbox lid, we have some of these spring clip retainers here. Simply pop those up. There should be 4 of them. Before we pull this up, on the back side right here, we have some vacuum tubes. I'm going to use my hose pliers here, open up the little spring clip here. I want to pull this hose off. And then right beside it is just a little vacuum tube. I'm going to just pull that one off too. And our air intake tube is stuck to our throttle body, so we just need to work that off. Now that we have those vacuum tubes removed off the back, we can remove our intake tube. Work this off of our throttle body, pull up this whole unit, remove it, and set it aside. Now on the top portion of the engine here, before we expose any internals of that engine, you want to go ahead and clean off any debris that might be on here, dirt, leaves, anything like that. We don't want to risk any debris falling in. So we're going to use compressed air. You can use a vacuum or whatever you have available, but definitely clear this out the best you can. And if you're doing both valve covers, don't forget to do the other side. Now the next process is going to be a continuous flow, just unbolting everything off the top or in the area of the valve cover going all the way back. So we're simply going to start with this bracket here and start to undo some ground straps and electrical connectors and gradually work our way back. Using a 10mm socket. And you're going to find that a 10mm is going to cover quite a bit of these components here, and you can sometimes just take a bolt and just put it right back in where it came from. That'll prevent you from having to store it someplace and potentially losing it. You can do the same thing on the old valve cover, and then when we go to install the new valve cover, we can simply remove it from the old one and put it into the new one. These connectors just have little tabs on here, and push down and slide those off. And then on your ignition coils here, same thing, little tabs on the top. You're going to pinch that and remove the connector. And you can use your pocket screwdriver to assist in lifting that connector off. Sometimes a larger screwdriver will assist a little bit better. Just going to go between the coil and that connector. And when you pinch that tab, just gently twist that up. Disconnect that. Now our coils also utilize a 10 millimeter. Our bolts are a little bit crunchy, so what we're going to do is we're just going to use a small bristle brush and clean ours off. All right. Go ahead and do the same for the other one. Once you get those two bolts out, we can grab the coils and we're going to gently twist them and pull up. We're going to set those aside. There's going to be two more coils further back, but we have to remove this component right here. Now before we unbolt this component here, we have the electrical connector going to it. There's a little spring clip on the top side. Sometimes it can be stuck, so I simply use a pair of hose pliers. And you want to be gentle doing this here, but gently pinch on the little spring clip and then just gently wiggle that off. There you go. Now the three nuts themselves are 12 millimeter. I'm going to go for the lower one first. I'm going to go for this upper one right here. Now the back one, we're going to add a swivel onto our extension. Make it a little bit easier for us to get to that back one. Now that we have the three nuts removed off the bracket onto this component here, there is a steel tube on the bottom. There is a 10 millimeter nut here, and right on the other side of the tube, there's another 10 millimeter. So I'm going to use my 10 millimeter socket and my 1/4 inch ratchet to get in here. You can simply flex that hose. Now there is a gasket on this as well. Most of the time you can reuse it, but if you need to, you want to be prepared to replace that. Now we're going to be reusing this hardware, so don't lose it. There's one of the nuts off there. Remove that nut there. Now this tube, we'll go ahead and push that down. There was a gasket there, so watch for that. There's the gasket. There goes the gasket. And flex it down a little bit. So now we can work this unit up off of the studs. slide that off. We're just going to swing that off to the front side of the vehicle. Now what we're going to do is focus on the two rear coils. We're going to do the same thing with the electrical connectors. We're going to pop those off, use our 10 millimeter and remove the nuts there and remove the coils. We're just using our ratchet on the back side here because it's a little bit harder to get our other tools in here. Remove the connectors. We can actually pull that coil right out with that wire, and I can separate that wire after. Whatever's easier for you. This is pretty simple to pop that out and then pinch this. We have a ground wire coming right here to the valve cover. That's another 10 millimeter. Loosen and remove that. I'm just going to pop the wire off and then throw the bolt right back in. And we have heater hoses coming down here, and there is a bolt right here. It's a 12 millimeter. I'm just going to use my socket. You can use a shallow socket. I'm going to use a couple extensions to come on up and clear the air box. Now along the back side of the engine, we also have another 12 millimeter right on the back of that valve cover. I'm going to use a gear wrench, and I'm just going to reach back here and grab that. Nice and easy. Once it's broken free, I'm just spinning that off with my hand. Move that bracket, and once again, you don't have to put the bolt back in, but I'm going to because we're going to have to transfer everything over on the bench anyways. So I'm just throwing this back in for now. At this point here, all of our external components are removed from our valve cover. So now we can go ahead and start to remove the 10 millimeter bolts around the perimeter to go ahead and separate the valve cover from the motor. So we're just going to remove our air filter here, set that aside. Now there are 9 10 millimeter bolts holding our valve cover in place. We're going to use our short extension and our 10 mil socket. Let's loosen and remove these. We are going to be reusing these. Now that we have all of our bolts out, what we're going to try and do is pull up on this valve cover. We might need a pry tool to go ahead and work this up and off, but let's go ahead and get to it. Now we're going to use a pry bar, and we're just going to use the tip of it, and we're going to get underneath just the edge of it and just gently pry up. We already have some movement there. Lifting up on that cover. I'm going to set the pry tool aside. Let's go ahead and lift up on this unit. Just going to reach back here and move that bracket in the back out of the way. Lift up on that cover. You just need to manipulate the valve cover around this EGR tube. Now that we have the cover separated here, there's a main wire harness that runs across the top here, and there are bolts with brackets going to the fuel rail. Now the wiring harness is simply pressed onto these brackets via these plastic clips. If you lift straight up on the harness, you can generally get this to be a little bit more mobile and out of the way. Might give us a little more room to get the valve cover out when we go to pull this up and out. Now that you have the cover off, don't forget you have the gasket here. So you want to be sure to go ahead and remove this. With the valve cover and gasket removed, our next step is to go ahead and clean where the old gasket was. We're going to do this by simply using some spray solvent. And then we're going to work our way around the cylinder head itself. We want to clean this, get off any residual oil, any of the old gasket making material, as we're going to apply some new gasket material. And you'll see what we mean in just a few moments once we get to that point. Now while you're doing this here, you want to make sure that you try not to get any material inside the engine. So make sure you're wiping away as you're cleaning and pushing any debris up and away. I'm going to do this all the way around the perimeter of the head. So right back here on the back of the cylinder head, there are almost like two cam ports. And there's some RTV on here on both sides that we need to clean that up. So we're going to use some spray solvent, and we're going to use a little bit of a little razor blade to kind of clean that up. Be careful not to score the aluminum. We don't want to damage that. But we want to clean it and make sure there's a nice clean surface. And then before we install the gasket and valve cover, we're going to apply some new RTV to both of those pieces there, and we'll show you that in just a little bit. I'll clean up all that old gasket material there. Now something like this has to be done. If you leave the old gasket material there, your valve cover is not going to seal. You're going to end up chasing an oil leak later on and going to have to do this whole job all over again just to replace a gasket. So this plays a crucial role in that valve cover replacement. Then when I come back, I'm going to clean all this up with some spray solvent. Make sure that is absolutely clean. We have our final cleaning on the back here. We've already did our sides. Let's go ahead and clean up the front section now. Now right here, where the flat surface meets the upper cam rail right here, there's going to be some RTV right there. We're going to have to clean that. And then before we install our new gasket and valve cover, you want to go ahead and apply a little bit more to that. So use your rag, wipe that out, make sure that it's clean. Now, if you have any residual gasket material, go ahead and use that blade just gently. Go ahead and clean that out. Then we're going to do the same to the top. Solvent down that rag. Go ahead and clean that out. Go ahead and use that razor blade. Shave that down. Clean that with some solvent. Okay, our cylinder head is prepped and ready for installation of the new gasket and valve cover. Now, whether you're replacing the valve cover with the new gasket or you have the old valve cover and you're replacing the gasket, you want to go ahead and grab that, take that gasket, and we're going to line that up. You're going to locate the notch in there. Everything is pretty much molded to the valve cover itself. Now, if you have the old valve cover, you want to go ahead and clean out the grooves using some spray solvent and a towel and clean, make sure there's no residual oil or any greases or anything in there. And then you're going to take that gasket and you're going to start to press it in. Now, there's two sides of the gasket. One actually has a portion that'll fit into the groove, and the other side, well, it's the fat side that's going to seal onto the cylinder head itself. You're going to slowly work this way around, making sure that it's fully seated. There's no other sealant that is needed on the valve cover gasket itself. So once you have that lined up and pressed all in, go around again, push it all the way in. And you know you have it right if it's all just continuous, nice and smooth. And that'll stay in when you flip that over because it's pressed in, so you don't have to worry about that falling out. Let's go ahead to the cylinder head and apply that RTV, and then we'll place our valve cover. Now, before we install the valve cover, we need to put some RTV right at the seam here where the flat portion meets the cam arch right here. I'm going to put it on the top as well. So this is about the amount that you want to use. And basically, you're just going to push it right into that corner and leave it a little goopy. You don't want to smear it, you just want to leave it as like a little ball. Okay, now that we have the two portions done in the front, let's go ahead and take care of the portions of the back. Now on the back side, we have some RTV on our finger. And right where these two castings come together, you're going to put a thin coat of RTV there. Do the same on the other cam unit right in the back over here. And at this point, we can go ahead and grab our valve cover and lower it into place. Now, this part is the most crucial part of the installation. You have to feed the valve cover in with the gasket installed around everything without pulling the gasket off and letting it drape or not seal. So make sure you have everything out of the way as much as possible. I'm going to reach around and make sure that gasket is still seated. And it is. Perfect. Now we're going to line up our spark plug tubes with our gaskets. Push that down on top of it. And then one last time, reach around the edges, making sure that nothing is interfering with the seating of the valve cover. At this point, let's install our 9 bolts around the perimeter. Now you can start some of these by hand. And when you tighten them, there is going to be a sequence of torquing these down because it is aluminum. You definitely need to torque these. So you can start them all, you can run them all down until they're seated. Just don't tighten them yet. Okay, we have all of them started. I'm going to go ahead and run those down quickly, and then we'll torque them. And we're switching over to our extension. Okay, let's torque them down. Now we're going to torque these 9 bolts down, and there's going to be a pattern to it. Now you're going to torque them to either 7 foot-pounds or 84 inch-pounds. We're going to start at the second one in here, come across to the third one in, straight up, back over, and then you're going to proceed to here, this front one, straight to the back, those 2, bottom, and then the top, and you're going to finish off number 9 is this front one here. So let's go ahead and do this. The back corner one requires the swivel. Our valve cover is now torqued. We're going to install our bolt on the back bracket. That is in the back corner, upper corner here. Thread that in a few threads. And then we're going to install the other bracket right down here for our heater tubes. Get that bolt started. I'm going to run that down as far as I can. And you just want to go ahead and snug these down. They don't have to be super tight, but you do want them to be snug. Remove our bolt here for this ground strap. And snug that down. Now you do want to make sure that is good and snug in that. The next thing you want to do is pay attention to your harness here that we removed from the metal clips on the fuel rail. You want to go ahead and line up those plastic tabs on those rails and push that down on. Get that harness nice and secure. Push that down. Let's install our ignition coils next. You can take your ignition coils, line those up, and feed those down into place. Let's grab our bolt and get those started, and then we can snug those down. These just gently need to be snugged into place. We can now install our harnesses for the coils. You'll line that up, push it on, you're going to feel it and hear it snap into place. These are going to be tough to mess up because they're pretty much cut to the length of the appropriate coil. We have a ground strap here. We can go ahead and install the bolt for that. Go ahead and snug that down. Let's bring over a component here. Line that up on the studs. And we also want to get the hard tube here to line up. Now that we have the 3 nuts on, let's snug those down. Now at this point we have our tube lined up on our studs. If you have the style gasket that has to fit over the studs first, go ahead and install that. Ours slides right over the studs themselves. Now I'm going to use my pry bar because this is technically a flex tube. I'm going to use my pry bar to gently hold that up into place. And I'm going to go ahead and try and get one of these nuts started on here. So we're able to get our nut snugged up there, or threaded up quite a ways. Now that we got that nut snugged up, let's go ahead and get that bottom one started. I'm going to thread that up as far as I can by hand, mainly due to the clearance issues that we're dealing with. You want to go ahead and make sure that that's good and snug. So once that nut bottoms out, go ahead and give it a little bit more. You want to make sure that the gasket is sealed and crushes a little bit to make a good seal there. Then you want to come on up to the upper one and do the same there. And if you want, for good measure, just go back to that lower one again. You do want to make sure that they're tightened up pretty evenly. Okay. Once you have those all tight, we have our electrical connector on the top here. You want to go ahead and connect this. Just line that up, push it on. You're going to hear it and feel it snap into place. Install this bracket. Snug that down. Then we have our sensor right here. Line up that connector. Slide that on. You're going to feel it and hear it snap into place. We're going to drop in our air filter. Then we're going to take our air intake unit here. We're going to line that up. Line up the air intake tube with the throttle body. I want to wiggle that into place. Make sure that our clamp is set up to tighten. Now on the back side here, we have a vacuum hose. I want to go ahead and line that up. I'm going to open up the clamp by pinching this and push that on. And release that little clamp. We have this little vacuum tube right here that goes on the back as well. Push it on, make sure it's fully seated. We have this little retainer clip. Then pop that in, install the sensor for the mass airflow. Push that on, you're going to hear and feel it snap into place. And let's lock down our air filter box by bringing the clips up. Make sure you get all 4 of these. There we go. Now, if we follow this harness back, there's one more of these little clips that just pops into this bracket. And then we want to come around here. We want to tighten down our hose clamp. make sure that that's good and snug, that this is not going to have any leaks around it. Go ahead and grab your little engine trim cover here, line that up. And we'll snug these down. Now after you snug these down here, now's a prime time for you to go ahead and perform an oil change on the vehicle. Just snug them down. If you were to be performing the driver's side valve cover and or gasket, you want to leave this off, perform that job, and finish off the job by installing this here. Install the ground terminal and snug that down. Get a little wiggle, make sure it's good and tight. At that point there, you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.